Hi again, it's me. We're having an audio issue, so it's just going to be a few minutes and we'll get started as it's corrected. Thanks so much.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. We're going to be testing out a video before we get started. Thank you for your patience.
Good morning, and apologies for that brief delay. I am Patricia Brown Holmes, Vice Chair of this commission. I want to welcome everyone here today to the Illinois Accountability Commission's 5th public hearing. Yesterday, if you were with us, you saw what Operation Midway Blitz did to this city. In South Shore, Little Village, and Lakeview, federal agents used military-style tactics to sow chaos and fear. In Old Irving Park and Evanston, they used force to punish anyone who dared to speak out. This is how the Trump administration weaponized immigration enforcement to terrorize Chicago and its residents. Today, we turn to what made all of that possible: immunity. Federal officials did not just tolerate lawlessness, they encouraged it, they shielded it, and they made a grand bargain with the agents. Deliver arrests, occupy the city through fear, and we will protect you, even if you violate the Constitution. After this morning's segment and a brief intermission, we will examine how federal officials used propaganda through a constant barrage of lies and staged ad campaigns to sell Operation Midway Blitz to the American public. We will then look ahead to fundamental rights that remain under attack, including our right to vote. Before we begin, though, please be advised that this hearing will include images, testimony, and public comment that may be graphic, profane, and difficult to witness or hear. Please take care of yourself and step out if needed. With that, I now turn to Commission Counsel Luis Salcedo to discuss the Trump administration's 3rd policy directive to provide immunity for lawless behavior. Mr. Salcedo.
Thank you, Commissioner Holmes. Almost 2 months into Operation Midway Blitz, there were no indications that DHS and the White House intended to stop their brutal campaign against Chicago or control the lawless behavior of their agents. The federal government had deployed hundreds of masked and heavily armed agents across the city. They came from Border Patrol units known for their aggressive behavior. They roamed the streets using force to stop people based on how they looked, the language they spoke, and the jobs they were doing. Agents also violated federal court orders by making warrantless arrests without justification, fired off chemical weapons against entire communities, and covered up their misconduct by lying in official reports. Stephen Miller then made a notable televised appearance on October 24th, 2025. As you will see in the following clip, he spoke directly to federal agents on the ground who are carrying out the White House's directives in Chicago.
To all ICE officers, you have federal immunity in the conduct of your duties. And anybody who lays a hand on you, or tries to stop you, or tries to obstruct you, is committing a felony. You have immunity to perform your duties, and no one, no city official, no state official, no illegal alien, no leftist agitator or domestic insurrectionist can prevent you from fulfilling your legal obligations and duties.
The message from Stephen Miller to federal agents was clear. No one can stop you. You might be wondering, why would a White House official give preemptive immunity to federal agents unless the Department of Homeland Security knew that their agents were breaking the law? We now know that the White House had no intention of stopping the mayhem because it was planning to barrel into other American cities with the same intimidation campaign, including into Minneapolis. Stephen Miller's message emboldened federal agents to go harder, to be more aggressive, and to more blatantly break the rules. Even if the message was legally flawed, federal agents are not immune to federal and state prosecution for breaking the law. The message was still dangerous. We know this because efforts to hold agents accountable at the local level were the only guardrails left. the White House, DHS, and the Department of Justice had already torn down the internal guardrails that the federal government had relied on for years to protect the public from reckless, dangerous, and unlawful conduct by federal agents. For example, they had driven away scores of experienced federal prosecutors, 27 attorneys from the Civil Rights Division, who specialized in bringing criminal charges against the most serious constitutional violations. They had slashed internal watchdogs and marginalized units responsible for investigating policy violations that would lead to disciplinary action. They made policies more lenient, including changing the vehicle pursuit policy to allow agents to intentionally ram other cars, a technique that DHS had banned because of the danger it posed to the public. Our first investigation this afternoon illustrates the kind of conduct that Stephen Miller and other federal officials wanted to shield from accountability. In Chicago's East Side, we saw the patent disregard for public safety, the repeated violation of constitutional rights and agency policies, and the concealment of the truth. Federal officials tolerated this very behavior from the man they put in charge of Operation Midway Blitz, former Commander Gregory Bovino, and they wanted federal agents on the ground to know that they were protected too. The East Side neighborhood is a suburban community on the far southeast side of Chicago, where most residents own their own homes. It has a population that is roughly 80% Latino. On the morning of October 14th, 2025, 3 Border Patrol agents, Benito Nunez, Carlos Chavira, and Jesus Guillen, were driving in a neighborhood in an unmarked car. They were masked, fully armed, and wearing green tactical body armor. They were on a roving patrol looking for people to question about their immigration status. That's when they spotted 2 Latinos sitting in a car in a store parking lot. The agents wrote in the reports that the individuals were, quote, suspicious because they were parked next to a store that appeared closed at 10 a.m. The store had been in fact open since 7 o'clock that morning. The agents stopped in front of their car. They would later report that the driver and his passenger sped away, hitting their car doors in the process. The agents wanted to chase them, but they knew their rental car had no emergency lights or sirens. They knew they were in a residential area, and because of the high risk to the public, they knew a pursuit would violate their own policies. The agents chased anyway. They activated their body cameras only after the pursuit was well underway. What you're about to see is a video showing these agents' lawlessness on full display. You will hear the agents discuss several terms you may not be familiar with. First, a pit maneuver, a highly dangerous law enforcement tactic requiring certification where officers intentionally ram a vehicle to stop it. It was banned by Border Patrol until the Trump administration reinstated its use in 2025. Second, you'll hear the agents say, quote, affective, when they develop an exit strategy to leave the neighborhood. Under the Fourth Amendment, law enforcement officers are not allowed to use preemptive force without cause. Affective was the way agents disguised their plan to use force offensively. In this case, their plan to gas the community whether or not they faced any threat from protesters or residents. Please be advised that this video contains graphic language and images.
Pin him. I'm certified. You hit my fucking leg, though, bro, so like...
Yeah, he hit me, dude.
Ask Sleepy if I can pit. Ask him if I can pit. Tell him I'm not certified. Tell him I'm not certified, though. You need to reach him on Zella.
Hey, Sleepy, permission to pit and pin.
Hey, Troy, I'm with you.
They advise drivers not certified. Tell him.
Stay with it.
Driver's not certified.
I'm gonna pit this door. Fuck you, bro. Fuck you. Right there. Pin him. That's ours.
Approaching 104th and 104th.
Hey, usted está following. Usted está following. Gonzalez.
Anzelo again, stop following that vehicle, stop.
We have one of our vehicles right behind us.
Border Patrol agents and this white truck crashing into a red SUV Tuesday morning. It happened following a chase that residents say circled the neighborhood for nearly 30 minutes.
I can get additional support. Additional support. Hey, stay back. Stay back. Hey, I need additional support. ¿Por qué azotaste a una gente?
No, yo no acerqué a nadie.
No seas mentirosa.
Yo estaba...
We are the police.
You are not the police.
Let's go. Get up. We are here fighting for your crimes.
I have no crime.
He's a citizen! He's a citizen!
You don't know what's going on, so get the fuck back.
You know what I think it is like we're so far south, the professionals, they're not coming down here on their bikes. Good point. They're not coming down here on their bikes because they're going to get jacked. True. So this is all neighborhood people.
Yo, we masking up.
Mask over here in a little bit, because that's going to have to get out of here.
Oh yeah,
It's going to be no other way.
yeah.
What we need to do when that actually get a handful of dudes and really think it through, and we can make it effective.
Yeah.
We had a couple of takeaways from the last one.
Okay, so what I was gonna have, listen to me, I was gonna have box stands laid out. And then, do you guys want to be in the rear, popping stuff?
Whoever's popping smoke, whoever's up in front, I don't mind doing it. I'm gonna gas this street. I'm gonna gas this street. You're extering to your right. Pass the word on. Get everybody's vehicles lined up. We're going to the right. We're going up the wrong way.
I guess we're walking up, so I can ask them no tear gas, right? Because we're walking up.
No tear gas?
Right? I mean,
That's fine. That's fine. It's just, if they start to collapse, what do you want us to do? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that fucking gas works damn good. Tell him sorry. Dude, tell him sorry. Hey!
Hey guys, sorry about that.
What you just saw was not a collection of mistakes. It was a pattern of deliberate defiance. The agents asked for pit authorization. They never got it. They pitted anyway, at 51 miles per hour, through a residential street, in a rental car with no emergency equipment. At that speed, a pit maneuver is considered deadly force by most police agencies because they pose a risk of serious injury or death. A section chief ordered them to stop. A field supervisor relayed that order multiple times. The agent said no and kept driving. The Chicago Police Department asked the agents not to deploy tear gas. They called it offective and did it anyway. They followed through by gassing residents, journalists, and the very CPD officers who asked them to stop. Afterward, the field supervisor's response was 3 words: tell them sorry. You heard the callous demeanor and careless language used by the agents. They did not prioritize the safety or rights of local citizens. This did not happen in a vacuum. The agents were told to go hard, and they were later told that they had immunity from the very White House that sent them to Chicago. Perhaps it's not surprising that the agents continued their lawlessness when they concealed the truth about their conduct in the East Side neighborhood. The agents did not document the high-speed vehicle pursuit or their use of deadly force when they used the deadly pit maneuver. That man you saw there tackled outside the store, a United States citizen, agents knew and kept him detained for hours despite knowing he had done nothing wrong. These are not memory errors. These are materially inaccurate official reports made by agents who knew their cameras were rolling. 2 days later, Commander Bovino posted about the 2 individuals that agents chased through the streets. He wrote, "Bad decisions come with real consequences." He was right about the bad decisions. He was right about those bad decisions. Unfortunately, they came from the agents who were bound to uphold the law. For the people of East Side, the homeowners, the families, the young man who walked out of a Walgreens, the bad decisions of the agents came with no consequences. No discipline, no termination, and no referral for investigation. This commission intends to change that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saucedo, for that overview of your investigation into the mayhem on the East Side. Commissioners, will now turn to our investigation presentation for Brighton Park and to lead Commission Counsel Ahmed Bassett and Commissioner Jimmy Arce, who will be presenting.
Thank you, Vice Chair Holmes. In this next presentation, you will see a familiar pattern play out in the Chicago neighborhood of Brighton Park on October 4th, 2025. Militarized federal agents conducting roving patrols, community members raising their voices to protect one another, and agents unleashing widespread mayhem in response. That morning, Miramar Martinez was exercising her First Amendment right, following federal agents throughout her neighborhood, honking and shouting La Migra, or ICE, to warn her fellow neighbors. For about 15 to 20 minutes, that's all that happened. A woman in her car warning her community. That is, until Border Patrol agent Charles Exum crashed into Miss Martinez's car. He then shot her 5 times. What followed was unlike anything in Chicago's modern history. Federal agents deployed no fewer than 15 rounds of chemical weapons on the Brighton Park community, on scores of residents and 27 Chicago police officers. And then came the cover-up. What DHS said happened and what actually happened, which Miramar Martinez and her attorney Christopher Parente will be here to tell you. But before we get to their testimony, you can see what happened for yourself in the following video, including never before heard testimony from an independent eyewitness. Please be advised that this video contains graphic language and images.
Something, bitch. All right, it's time to get aggressive and get the fuck out, because they're trying to box us in.
The agent was speeding down, driving really reckless. You know, we're all honking and beeping.
We're gonna make contact. We're boxed in. We are boxing.
The Department of Homeland Security says Martinez rammed the agent's SUV, but Martinez says they rammed her. In this surveillance footage, you can see Martinez's gray Nissan Rogue. The Chevy is being driven by Border Patrol agent Charles Exum.
The agent is just following her like very, very closely. The ICE agent hits her.
Be advised, we've been struck, Don't you fucking move! Don't you fucking move!
Then they were shooting, then they got out of the car.
When Agent Exum stopped and fired at Martinez, the video shows her car was not blocking his, contradicting the Department of Homeland Security's account of the incident.
Did you see it?
Yes, I did.
Before the shooting, did it seem or sense as if the agents were under some sort of threat or attack?
No, not at all.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Y'all, you know that was.
He says, guys, thank you so much. Like, I just want to let you know, please be very careful. We have no idea what they're capable of.
This is a Chicago police.
This is a Chicago police officer.
Saying this about a U.S.
Federal ICE agents. There were a lot of people that were immediately impacted.
We run into a woman who is crying, asking for help. She has been tear gassed. She is on the floor on her knees crying.
People were trapped in like the gas cloud. The gas was so potent that you could feel it in your eyes. It was sitting in the back of your throat. Some community members did have kids present.
Multiple families live in these houses.
You could see the frustration in everyone's eyes that there was this group of military personnel that came and just disrupted our Saturday. It was insane.
I want to pause here to emphasize that the public has heard, for the first time ever, an independent eyewitness account from a person who saw Agent Exum shoot Ms. Martinez on October 4th, 2025. And as you heard for yourself, Ms. Martinez's account has been corroborated. Agent Exum fired at Ms. Martinez with zero provocation. But as you also saw, the witness offered her testimony anonymously. The commission has worked with this anonymous witness over the last several months and invited her to testify here today. Through her attorney, she declined. She was uncomfortable coming to the commission and publicly telling her story. The same is true for two other anonymous witnesses with whom the commission has met with to discuss this incident and has also corroborated Ms. Martinez's story. This is a familiar theme the commission has encountered throughout the investigations detailed over the last 2 days, especially within the immigrant community. With that, we now turn to the person at the center of the events of October 4th, 2025, Ms. Miramar Martinez. Good afternoon, Ms. Martinez. Can you please introduce yourself to the commission and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, what you do for a living?
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Miramar Martinez. I am 31-year-old. I am a daughter of immigrants, a first-generation Mexican-American. I am a teacher's assistant also at a Montessori school.
So you're a teacher, Ms. Martinez?
Teacher's assistant.
And you've lived in Chicago your whole life?
Yeah, I grew raised and born in Chicago, Illinois, South Side.
I want to talk about October 4th, 2025. Can you tell us what you were doing that morning?
So that morning, I was just on my way to donate clothes to my local church. That's it.
And did you notice anything unusual as you were trying to donate some clothing?
Yeah, I saw an unmarked vehicle near the area. And I'm talking about, it was a beautiful Saturday morning. We had landscapers, we had people outside, and it was just strange to see an unmarked vehicle.
And what did you do when you saw the unmarked vehicle?
Well, first I just observed it, right? I saw out-of-state plates in the back. It had Kentucky plates, no front license plate, and then on the corner windshield, right side, it had a Uber sticker, and I just found it strange. The driver was a white male, Border Patrol. You know, ever since Midway Blitz started, I was aware that ICE agents were in our community. So first thought, I was like, yes, it's an ICE agent. So I just started honking my horn and screaming out, La Migra. I did it because I just wanted to bring awareness and let my community know that agents were in our community.
For those who might not know what La Migra means, can you just explain what that is?
Immigration.
I want to go back a second. You mentioned that by this point in time, October 4th, 2025, you had already seen ICE agents, CBP, in your neighborhood. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you just give us a sense of how that impacted your community?
It was overwhelming, right? We had children living in fear. We had people scared to even go out, grocery shopping. It wasn't fair because I had my niece asking me, my niece is 9 years old. She don't know. And she told me why ICE agents don't like us. What am I supposed to explain that to her? So it was just overwhelming for our community, our children, to go through that pain.
Had you seen ICE agents use force in your neighborhood at all?
Yes.
Can you describe that for us, please?
We saw agents breaking windows, entering homes without warrants, slamming people on the floor. It was chaotic.
I want to go back now to October 4th. You mentioned that you noticed this unmarked car and you were trying to warn your neighbors. This might seem like an odd question, but why were you doing that?
You understand when you come from a background of immigrants, the fear of living in fear. And I did what I had to do. It wasn't it wasn't political. It was nothing, right? I just acted like any human being will act. I'm just human with empathy that understands, and I'm tired of going through this, watching our community live in fear. It's painful.
Do you know for how long you were driving around the neighborhood and trying to warn your neighbors?
It was like less than 20 minutes around there, 15 to 20 minutes.
And what was this unmarked SUV doing as you were trying to warn your neighbors?
Just driving around.
Were they following you around?
Well, I was following them. Okay. They were just driving around. Like we were by Marquette. I don't know if you're aware of Marquette Park, so we were just like driving around Marquette.
Can you describe what happened to you in the area of 39th and Kedzie that morning?
Yeah, so I got next to them, and I just remember him swerving at me. And then there was a point where I saw him and he saw me, and that's when our vehicles came in contact, and he swiped at me. And then after that, at the swipe swap, I came to a complete stop, and then he stopped like a couple feet. And then in my head, I was just, honestly, I panicked. I was just scared because prior to that, back in September, Silverio Villegas, I don't know if you heard about his case, well, he got killed back in September. And that's the first thing I thought. I was like, I'm in danger and I just want to go somewhere safe. So as I was passing him, like he was getting down, and I just remember I got to the far left side, trying to avoid him, and I just saw him drawing his gun, and I just like shrugged, and that's when I heard the shots, and that's it. Like my mind just went blank.
You mentioned Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, the man who was shot and killed in September. That's the individual in Franklin Park, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to ask, because you saw the video, you've seen the reports, did you at any point in time box in the car being driven by federal agents?
No, never.
Did you at any
You
time?
even see in the video, like they were not boxed in.
Did you at any time ram the agent's SUV?
No, never.
So you mentioned that you stopped your car after being hit by the agent.
Yeah.
And then seeing the agent exit the car. Can you walk us through what happened next, please?
So after I stopped, they stopped, right? And then I just got to my far left, and I was like, I gotta get to safety, somewhere safe, right? If they want me, like I don't know, I just wanted to go somewhere safe. Point is, like, that's it. So in order for me, I had to pass them. I couldn't reverse, nothing. So I got to the far left. In the video, you could even see that I hit the curb. So as I stepped on the gas, I was passing him, and he was getting down also. You could see in the video also that he shot me in under 2 seconds. So as I was passing him, he was like getting out, drawing his gun already, or he had his gun. I think he had his gun already. And then I just remember getting close to the steering wheel, and I just like shrugged a little bit, and then I heard the shots.
Can you walk us through what was going through your head as you saw and then felt the agent shoot at you?
Fear, like just my life flashing by, and then after I heard the shots, like my mind just went blank, and I don't remember after. I just remember like looking down and like feeling on the side like wet, warm, and I just looked down, I touched the side and looking at my hand, covered with blood, and then I don't remember after.
Where did you go after you were shot by Agent Exum?
So I drove a mile, right? So I stopped on 35th in California. It's like it's not a mechanic shop. It's like a truck stop for semi-trucks. I stopped right there and I called 911, and then the workers came out and they helped me.
What was going through your mind as you were calling 911 and asking for help?
I don't want to die.
Were you eventually transported to the hospital? And were you alone at the hospital? Did the agents eventually join you in the hospital? You can take your time.
The record will reflect that the witness responded affirmatively and shook her head to your last few questions.
Yes, after I stopped on 35th, there was a moment where like I did blanked out and I gave up. I just saw the light, they sat me down and I saw the light. And after I woke up, I was being already put in the stretcher, transported to the hospital, Mount Sinai.
And when you eventually woke up in the hospital, can you tell us who was there with you?
So I saw, okay, first when I arrived at the hospital, it was a bunch of Chicago police officers. And then I got some x-rays done, so they had to take me out the room. And then when they brought me back to the room, it was like different agents. And they were like, they had typical casual clothes, no uniform, nothing. So I was just, and there was a bunch of them. And I was just looking around. Nobody was telling me anything, what was happening. And a couple minutes later, 4 agents came in my room. 3 of them were FBI agents, and they showed me their badge. And then there was another agent that he didn't even show me nothing. He didn't tell me his name, nothing. So the FBI agents were like reading my Miranda rights. And then the last agent, and then I told them, I was like, I don't want to speak. I want an attorney. I'm not going to speak. And they're like, we respect that. And then the last agent that didn't show me his badge, nothing, he was like, what's your name? And I told him my name, and he's like, oh, are you a citizen? And I looked at him, and I got so mad. I was so mad. I was like, are you really asking me this? And I was like, yes, I am a citizen. What the fuck are you, what are you gonna do? Like, well, you're gonna take me out this room, this and that? And then he's like, and then one of the FBI agents, he stopped and he was like, you know what, like, we didn't came for that, like, we just want to know your side of your story. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk to nobody, like, please leave my room. And they were like, okay, we respect that. So they gave me my space. But that ICE agent, he still kept coming in and out my room. And I had to tell him, like, I don't want you in my room. I'm like, I don't feel safe. And I remember some of the nurses, like, it was like, I don't know if she was like a nurse or a doctor. She came in and I told her, I was like, please, like, I have this agent that keeps coming in and out my room. Like, I don't want him here. I don't feel safe. And you know what she said? She looked at me and she's like, sorry, I can't do nothing about it, but you should have never rammed them. And I was like, rammed? I'm like, what do you mean? And mind you, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know they were like saying that I rammed agents. I didn't know. I was like, what do you mean? Like, they hit me. And she just looked at me and she walked away. And it was heartbreaking, you know, for somebody in the healthcare to tell you that. It's just heartbreaking. And I was like, I don't want to go back to Mount Sinai.
And to be clear, as the agents are talking to you, trying to interview you, you're still recovering from...
Yes.
And can you describe the injuries that you sustained as a result of the agent shooting you 5 times?
I got shot 5 times, so can I show?
Only if you're comfortable.
Yeah. So I got shot right here. Then this one came out through here. I have one in my right chest, right here on the side. My upper thigh, I have an entry and exit wound. And then that one traveled to the bottom of my left leg, through the calf. I went out in and out. So I have 7 holes in my body.
Were you eventually discharged from the hospital that day?
Yeah, I was left there for less than 3 hours. I got discharged, and then I was placed into FBI custody, and they had to take me out through the back. In the back, there was like over a dozen ICE agents. It was just 3 FBIs, right? Just 3. And then it was like, you should have seen, it was crazy. It was like out of a scene of a movie. We had agents like all over the block. And then I remember as they were putting me in the car, one of the agents was the same agent that kept coming in and out my room. He took out his phone and he was trying to take a picture of me. And I just went like, I don't consent to you taking pictures of me. And he's like, I just needed proof. And I was like, proof for what? And I'm like, I don't consent to that. And I just sat in the...
So I just want to clarify, when you were released from the hospital, you weren't free to go home, you were taken to the FBI building. Did they explain why they did that?
No, and I was asking them, I was like, what's happening? And they didn't want to tell me nothing. They were like, we don't know what's happening. And then after I was like taken to the FBI building, my dressing started soaking in blood. So I had to get transported back to another hospital.
So just to clarify, the dressing, you mean like the bandages on your body?
Yeah, the bandages, like they were covered in blood.
So you had to get taken back to the hospital to get
And left
rebandaged.
overnight, yeah.
And then when you were released from the hospital, were you then allowed to go home?
No,
Where'd you go?
to MCC, Chicago.
And just to be clear, the MCC is a federal holding facility, is that your understanding?
Correct.
Were you charged with a federal crime?
Right there, yeah, that's when I found out like I was being charged for impeding, assaulting.
Can you tell us how that made you feel to be charged with a federal crime after having been shot?
When they were telling me, I didn't like really react to it because I was like, damn, I'm here with gunshot with holes in my body. So I didn't really mind it till I seen the news and everything that they were saying, like I was being labeled as a domestic terrorist. That's when like it really got to me.
I want to ask you a few questions about that. You mentioned that the Department of Homeland Security labeled you as a domestic terrorist right after the incident, is that right?
Correct.
And how'd that make you feel?
Mad, but at the same time, it was like I have bigger issues to worry about. Like I'm in federal prison with bullet holes all over my body, and I'm just trying to stay alive because I didn't know what was gonna happen to me, if I was gonna even make it, and my bandages were like covered in blood. Also, I'm over there limping in a walker, so it was just too much, honestly.
Speaking of DHS, I want to show you an exhibit of a post that they made attributing a statement to you, and I want to ask you a couple questions about that post. Here there's a tweet or an X post from Tricia McLaughlin, and the portion that says, the armed woman was named in a CBP intelligence bulletin last week for doxing agents and posting online. Hey, to all my gang, let's mess up those guys. Don't let them take anyone. Did you post that?
I don't even know how they got that.
And I just want to clarify something because much has been made of this as well. They mentioned that you were armed. Did you point a firearm at any of the agents as you were driving around?
No.
Do you have a license to?
Yes, I have a license.
Okay. I want to briefly return to the criminal charges. As part of your criminal case, there were some text messages that were released, including one that we saw in the video earlier. In that message, the agent who shot you, Agent Exum, bragged that he shot you 5 times and that there were 7 bullet holes. Do you recall reading that text?
Yeah.
And what was your reaction to that?
Honestly, it was heartbreaking to read that because they didn't saw me as human. My life didn't matter to them. They just saw me like disposable. And it's crazy because they're federal agents. They're not supposed to talk like that.
It's been about 6 months since the incident. Can you describe for us how this has affected your life, physically, emotionally, mentally?
It's been hard. Like, to this day, like, I'm barely processing what happened. I have not been able to fully cry. Like, yes, I get tear eyes, right? But I haven't really been able to process this. I'm in therapy. I'm doing hand therapy and therapy, just so I could like cope with it. My family got affected by it. My mom also, I saw her, it was just hard times, honestly. My mom was fainting and she took it the hardest. And for me, I had to remain strong for them. Not being able to show them how I felt. I'm like, I got this, like, it's okay. It's It's been a journey.
You were shot by federal agents. You were charged with a federal crime. You were labeled as a domestic terrorist. Has anyone from the federal government apologized to you for each of those mistakes that were made?
No, none.
Have they even removed the label attributed to you as a domestic terrorist?
No.
They still stand by it. I just have one last question. You've testified in front of the United States Senate earlier this year. You've given interviews, you've shared your story, you've testified today before the commission. Can you tell us why you decided to share your story and to keep sharing your story?
Yeah, because honestly, I don't want to do this. I don't. It's hard, just to relive this is hard. Just talking about it, it's hard. But I'm doing it not just for me. I'm doing it for my community, for those kids, that anybody that's living in fear, honestly, because we're going through some dark times. And I feel like my voice matters. And enough is enough. When I'm just tired, honestly. I'm tired of going through this. And I just want change, and I'm asking for change. I've been judged, I've been criminalized, I've been shot, but I'm still here speaking. And I want change. That's what I want. I'm doing it for my community, for my immigrant community, for the kids.
The commission is deeply grateful for your testimony. Your voice does matter, and we thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
I'll now hand it over to Lead Commission Counsel Ahmed Bassett.
Ms. Martinez, thank you for not just staying strong for yourself and your family, but the entire Chicagoland community.
Thank you.
Mr. Parente is one of the attorneys who represents Mrs. Martinez. He will now explain how the entire chain of command of the federal government tarnished the name of one of their citizens and doubled down on lies about what happened. The commission now calls Christopher Parente to provide testimony.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Parente.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us how you got involved in this incident with Ms. Martinez?
Yeah, and just before I begin, I just want to say, both as her attorney and just as a human being, sitting next to her, watching her do this, it's very difficult, it's very painful. And at times I regret certain things, but I want you to know that we trust that this commission and Governor Pritzker specifically is going to do something about it. And that's what I told Mayor Mars, that you see what it does to her every time she has to relive this, and we are trusting that this commission and Governor Pritzker are going to follow through and bring accountability to Agent Exum and to these other ICE agents. So I just wanted to start with that, and thank you for having us. Yeah, I got a call. Mayor Mars, a Montessori school teacher, and I was reached out to by a member of the community. I had heard that she was in jail. Knowing her background, I knew that there was an issue and something was wrong. So I quickly represented her just to at least get her out of jail. And after speaking to her just for a few seconds, I quickly realized that there was an issue here and that the government was on the wrong side of this.
Now, you're a defense attorney now, but were you ever on the other side working for the government?
Yeah, I'm a former federal prosecutor for about 15 years, 10 years in the Chicago U.S. Attorney's Office, 5 years in the Miami U.S. Attorney's Office, and I started my legal career at Jenner & Block as an associate.
So you've seen some things.
Yes, which is why I knew after meeting her for 8 seconds that she wasn't a domestic terrorist and that she didn't ram law enforcement.
Now, despite being crashed into, despite being shot at, Ms. Martinez was charged with a crime immediately after she's released from the hospital. Can you give us an overview of what her case, what happened in her case generally?
Sure. So she was arrested in the hospital, as you heard. The next day she was charged by criminal complaint, and they charged her with assault of a federal agent. Interestingly enough, a week later when they indicted her, they dropped the assault prong and only charged impeding. Now again, if the government is telling the truth and this woman rammed a federal agent and then tried to run him over, you would assume that they would have stuck with the assault charge. So as soon as I saw that they dropped that, I knew there was sort of blood in the water on this one. And then over the course of the next 6 weeks, we sort of just kept our foot on the neck of the federal prosecutors here. And unlike most federal cases where when you get new discovery, things got worse for your client, every time we would get new evidence in this case, it showed that this was completely wrong, that the agents were lying to the U.S. Attorney's Office, that they were lying to the American people, and eventually, to the credit of the U.S. Attorney Andrew Boutros, he did the right thing and ended up having his prosecutors dismiss the case against Ms. Martinez with prejudice 6 weeks later.
One of the pieces of evidence that came in your discovery that the commission was able to utilize in our presentation was body-worn camera from inside of the agent's car. You heard words like, "We're getting boxed in, we've been struck." And you just referenced how some of these statements made it into the U.S. Attorney's Office's, for instance, press releases. Is that right?
They did, and look, the reason I think we've all seen Operation Midway Blitz be a huge failure, at least from the criminal justice standpoint, and why all those cases went nowhere, is because the U.S. Attorney's Office stopped doing what they usually do, which is investigate first and then charge. And they just started charging people based on the words of ICE agents that just have been deemed not trustworthy in this community.
Here's one example. I'd like to show you now a press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Northern District of Illinois. And you see there highlighted in their explanation that agents were unable to move his vehicle. Is that?
Correct. Yeah, which again is completely false. And again, not gray, like this is black and white, completely false. And so we obtained surveillance video from the shop right where the agent's car stopped that showed there was absolutely no one in front of the vehicle, right? He was not boxed in. He was certainly able to move his car, and then you see him move the car a little bit later. So we knew that this was false. And again, this was the stuff that we would take to the U.S. Attorney's Office and say, look, these agents are lying to you. Here's the video. They're lying to you. And again, it took a little time, but eventually they recognized that they were being lied to by DHS agents.
Now, it's fair to say, though, that these agents were interviewed by FBI agents, correct?
That's correct.
And one of these agents actually drew a diagram of the crime scene, correct?
Correct.
And in that diagram, they depict at least being boxed in. Is that fair to say?
Right, because, and remember, the boxed in, they needed that because that justified why Exum got out and shot her 5 times. So that's a critical point, and that's why they had to commit to it.
Let's take a look at that diagram. I'd like to show you a diagram that one of the agents drew when interviewed by FBI agents about this incident.
Right, so you see the yellow highlight there, that's the agent's vehicle. That's where he comes to a stop after Ms. Martinez allegedly rammed him, although we know that he rammed into her. Ms. Martinez's car is that silver Nissan on the bottom left. And then the agent, his partner, Exum's partner, drew those 3 red boxes to represent cars. If this were true or accurate, then he really is boxed in, and they really did need to jump out and shoot this woman. But those 3 cars, there's video that shows that's completely not true. And think about this. To your point, this is an ICE agent making this statement to an FBI agent. It's a clear lie. Everyone would agree. I think even the U.S. Attorney's Office would say that that is absolutely a lie. Why is that agent not charged, right? Why am I defending an individual right now for standing in front of an ICE vehicle at Broadview for 10 seconds, and they have 3 AUSAs assigned to the case, and this agent who draws a fake diagram and turns it into an FBI agent as a cover-up, there's no investigation of him. That's why we're here today, is to try to get some action. This guy's a federal law enforcement. He's probably still serving. If he's willing to draw a fake diagram like this, what else is he willing to do?
And that's not Agent Exum who drew that, right? It's somebody who was in his car,
yeah,
correct?
It's Agent B or whatever you would call him.
Now, what does Agent Exum say about the actual shooting and how he does it?
He says he jumps out of the car and shoots Miramar because she's driving directly at him. And again, look how close she is. If she's truly driving directly at him, he'd still be pinned to the side of his car, right? She was not. She's doing exactly what she said. She went to the far left and around him. But when you're lying, you have to keep lying, and that's what he did. So he said, I shot her 5 times straight through the windshield. Absolutely, again, objectively not true, and you'll see the evidence that it's not true.
Well, there is some ballistics evidence to indicate one way or the other if that is true, correct?
Correct.
And there are some photos of bullet holes from Ms. Martinez's car that reflect this. I'll show you one photograph, that being of the front windshield. Tell us what you see here.
So these are the, right, remember, he tells the FBI, again, lying to a federal agent, right? He tells him, I shot her 5 times through the windshield. He also texts that to his buddies. I shot her 5 times through the windshield, which, again, would be correct if she were truly driving at you. The reason you see only 3 shots there is because he forgot to mention that 2 of the shots went through the side and then the rear of the car. But this would be consistent with her driving away from him and around.
And these, to be clear, these bullet holes are to the right side of the front windshield, which reflects that she was driving to his left at the time this was being shot.
Correct. And remember, because as you saw in the diagram, she's 2 car lengths away from him. So if she's truly driving right at him, to your point, it's going to be right through the driver's side, of the windshield. Instead, because she's driving away from him, that's where they are.
Let's take a look at another photo here. I'll show you a photo of the back passenger windshield.
Yeah, so 2 things here. One, you'll see the bag in there. That's the clothes that she was on her way to donate to the church, which are still with the FBI, now covered in blood, unfortunately. But it's interesting part of that picture. But 2, yes, again, if she's truly driving at the agent, then how does the agent shoot out the back rear passenger window?
And there's actually a 3rd photo that further corroborates your point, and we'll show that now. It's a photograph of inside of Ms. Martinez's car.
So what you can see there, we can't really zoom in, but the tunneling of that bullet shows that it's coming from the back of that seat to the front of that seat, which again is the opposite of someone driving at you. She's already passed him, and it's a clear violation of DHS's own use of force policy. You're not allowed, obviously, to shoot at a fleeing vehicle. So not only did he lie that she was driving at him, that he shot her 5 times through the windshield, but he also violated the use of force policy by shooting a fleeing vehicle. Yet, again, no word on any kind of punishment for this guy.
So Ms. Martinez's car is already in front of him at the time of this bullet hole.
Yeah, if the laws of physics apply to this, then yes, she's already passed him.
Now, you referenced some surveillance video that you obtained. Where's this video from? And I'll actually, let's play it first.
Sure.
I'd like to show the surveillance video we're about to discuss.
So that's the agent's vehicle right there. That's her going around him. So remember, there's a collision between the 2 cars, right? And that's where the agent stopped, right there, where you see him in the front, and then she comes around him. But what you saw in that video was, 1, there's no cars in front of him, right? So the agent's diagram, there you go. Where are those other cars? They're not there. They don't exist. So again, this is how you get a case dismissed at the U.S. Attorney's Office after 6 weeks. But clearly the agents were lying. So where's the follow-up investigation? Why are these agents not being investigated by the AUSAs who are charging Broadview protesters for standing in front of an ICE vehicle? That's the question.
And so from your experience, you're aware of there are actually criminal charges available for people who affirmatively lie to federal agents.
18 U.S.C. 1001, right? Lying to a federal agent. Federal agents, despite what Stephen Miller says, are not immune from prosecution. They cannot lie to other federal agents. They need to be prosecuted and held accountable for this. You can't draw fake diagrams and say that you shot someone through the windshield when you shot her from behind. It's just not fair.
Now, that wouldn't be the only obstructive type of conduct. What did Agent Exum do immediately after this incident?
After this incident, again, unbelievably, right? This case was national news from the second it happened, right? It blew up. Kash Patel tweeted a video that wasn't even Marimar's car. He showed another ramming incident and said it was her. Still up there. He never withdrew it. National news, right? And the whole claim is this Montessori school teacher, who's now a domestic terrorist, rammed this federal agent and they had to shoot her, right? So the 2 key pieces of evidence are going to be her car and the agent's car, right? That's it. Her car, to this day, is still in FBI custody under lock and key, which is where his car should have been. But for reasons unknown to us, Agent Exum was given his car back the same day, and he ends up driving it all the way across the country back to Maine, where he came from, and conveniently, he ordered the in-house Border Patrol mechanic, yes, apparently they have in-house mechanics, to, quote, buff out all of the scratches that would have been there, that would have allowed our expert to examine and prove that he actually swerved into her.
Now, isn't it accurate that Agent Exum said he had some sort of approval from his supervisors to go ahead and...
He did, and he did have approval. He emailed them and said, I want to get my car buffed out and remove the evidence of this ramming, and so they allowed it to happen.
And in their good wisdom, they didn't stop that.
Yeah, again, why the U.S. Attorney's Office released a key piece of evidence before the defense could look at it is beyond me. I still have no idea why that happened, and why they would be allowed to buff out the, quote, evidence of this ramming that never actually happened is also beyond me.
What was
I'm sorry, to their credit, this is probably in part why they ended up dismissing the case.
What was the reaction to the shooting from the chain of command?
It was, you know, I think you talked about it earlier in the presentation. There's this culture, unfortunately, and again, as a former federal prosecutor, it pains me to see this, but there is this culture right now in DHS for some reason of celebrating actions like this. They embrace it and they think it's funny, they think it's great, and you kind of get rewarded by doing it. So instead of, when I grew up and when I worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office, if we had a bad shooting or if an agent had to shoot someone, it's the worst thing that can happen. There's no celebration. No officer wants to shoot somebody. No one leaves their house that morning and says, I can't wait to use my gun. That's not the law enforcement that I grew up with or the agents that I worked with. But there's something going on right now, probably because you have Stephen Miller out there encouraging them to do it with full immunity, that when they shoot people and when they flex, it's celebrated right now, and there's no discipline, and in fact, they're actually rewarded for it.
And what does Commander Bovino say to Exum in terms of this shooting?
Yeah, so we got an email in discovery, which I'll point out that they didn't disclose to us at first. The federal judge had to actually order them to give it to us, which is again crazy why you wouldn't disclose this under the rules of evidence. But the interesting thing about this email, so this is an email from Commander Bovino directly to the agent, and it's sent 3 hours after the shooting, right? So clearly, no investigation's done. Marimar's in the hospital. No one knows if she's even going to live. And you have Greg Bovino emailing the shooter saying, congratulations, I'm going to extend your retirement ability at our agency for all the excellent service in Chicago. Bovino had no idea what this guy's service was other than he shot a U.S. citizen. So this was disgusting. This is the top levels, right? Greg Bovino emailing the agent 3 hours after a shooting, offering to extend his retirement age. I mean, it's incredible that this is happening.
And for the record, I will read the email. Mr. Exum, good afternoon. I'd like to extend an offer for you to extend your retirement beyond age 57. This will be your second extension, and we'd like you to consider this if feasible. In light of your excellent service in Chicago, you have much yet left to do. Joe, would you have the staff work with Mr. Exum to accomplish this most illustrative endeavor? Thank you. Greg Bovino.
I mean, they haven't even cleaned up her blood off of the street of Kedzie, and this is what your boss is sending you? That's crazy. It's unheard of.
And is there any other evidence that was uncovered through the discovery process indicating others had shared congratulations with Agent Exum?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen some of the text, but we recovered numerous text messages from other Border Patrol agents. By the way, they're using this Signal application, which is encrypted chat. Why law enforcement needs to have encrypted chat to talk with each other throughout this is beyond me, but they were. And it's this good old boys network of, congratulations, you're a hero among all of us, beers on me forever. Like, again, I mean, the law enforcement that I worked with, that I grew up with, that I stood side by side with for 14 years as a federal prosecutor, none of those people ever wanted to use their service weapon. So to see this group of individuals, which happens to be Border Patrol, encouraging and celebrating the shooting of a Montessori school teacher with no criminal history it's disgusting.
Was there actually a text reflecting that former Secretary Noem and others in the chain of command had extended their congratulations?
Yep, again, this was the text messages that the U.S. Attorney's Office did not disclose to us at first until the federal judge ordered them to, but I forget who Exum is talking to, either his wife or one of his buddies, and they said, hey, how is DHS handling this? And he's like, I have the full support. I was told by Bovino that I have the support of Secretary Noem and El Jefe himself. We believe El Jefe was a reference to Trump. Because they dismissed the case, we weren't able to kind of develop that record, but it seems to be the most material reading of that.
Now, Agent Exum is on administrative leave. There's some indication that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Indiana is investigating this matter. What would you say to those who point to this as proof that the Department of Justice and this federal government is serious about holding agents accountable?
It's been 6 months, right? There's been, if I reach out to this prosecutor in Indiana, in South Bend, I get he'll take my calls. I get no updates necessarily. But again, how long does it take, right? Again, I'm about to go to trial for somebody standing in front of an ICE vehicle for 20 seconds, and they have 3 federal prosecutors on that case ready to go to trial. Why can't we take one of those and have them investigate agents who would make up a drawing to justify a bad shooting? Why can't we take one of those to investigate Agent Exum, who's lying about shooting her through the windshield, right? Or being rammed or being driven at? They need to put the resources where they matter, which is corrupt agents, corrupt DHS agents, and stop with this nonsense of going after protesters.
Mr. Parenti, last question for you. Is there anything else you'd like to share about Ms. Martinez, her case, with the public and the commission that you haven't already?
No, just that she's a warrior. She's an absolute warrior, and she didn't want any of this, and in fact, she was silent until she saw what happened in Minnesota with Ms. Good and Mr. Peretti, and she's like, we can't stay silent. The public needs to see these text messages. They need to see that Greg Bovino is emailing agents, rewarding them for this. And, it's painful to sit here next to her and watch her go through this, but I know that it's important for her, and again, I told my kids about her. Like, to me, she's a hero.
I echo those sentiments. The commission echoes those sentiments. Ms. Martinez, we are greatly appreciative of you being here and being a hero. Mr. Parenti, thank you for being here today and explaining this case.
Thank you for having us.
Again, we'd like to echo our gratitude to you both for sharing your story, and especially to you, Ms. Martinez, for once again speaking out on behalf of those who can't speak out for themselves. Based on its investigation, including eyewitness testimony, body cam footage, court filings, and forensic video analysis, the commission has determined reasonable cause to believe that Agent Charles Exum shot an unarmed civilian without justification. That evidence was deliberately tampered with and destroyed. That federal agents produced materially inaccurate official reports. That chemical agents were deployed indiscriminately against a residential neighborhood without warning. And that DHS and DOJ leadership failed to ensure accountability at every level. This is an extraordinary and profoundly alarming pattern of events. Not procedural lapses or technical errors, but consistent, intentional violations of the law and deliberate institutional cover-up. Such severe breaches of public trust and democratic norms should underscore the essential role of this commission. We'll now turn to Mr. Saucedo to speak to what occurs when systems experience a sustained failure of accountability.
Thank you, Commissioner Arce. That was our final investigation presentation. We detail the commission's findings in all 16 investigations in the commission's final report. Over the past 2 days, we have spoken about what happens when we fail to hold institutions and individuals accountable for their actions. During our hearing yesterday, you heard from Jennifer Moriarty, a resident from Evanston, about an agent named Timothy Donahue. The agent pulled his gun on civilians, used dangerous brake checks to provoke vehicle crashes, and denied medical care to a man he had beaten and who suffered serious injuries. You'll now see video of some of these interactions. Please be warned that there may be explicit language and graphics.
Shoot you. You're gonna what? You're gonna fucking shoot me? Hey!
Agent Donahue followed Gregory Bovino to Chicago from his previous campaign in Los Angeles. He has a history and a reputation, including a number of racist and misogynist posts on social media. It shouldn't surprise us to learn that Agent Donahue was at the scene of a number of the most violent and chaotic episodes of Operation Midway Blitz. We saw him in Brighton Park, Broadview, Albany Park, Little Village, and other neighborhoods. Chicago residents remember him because he accosted them walking down the street. He beat them, he racially profiled them, and he pulled his weapon on them. You'll now see some of the extensive evidence the Commission gathered documenting the repeated misconduct of Agent Donahue. As a reminder, the language and images you're about to see are graphic.
Back up! Back up! Stay back! Stay back! We're gonna push the whole crowd all the way back to the intersection. We're gonna what? Push the whole crowd back to that intersection. Right now? Yeah. Nice. Please, stop. You need to listen now. Wait. Hey, Brian. Hey, please. Hey, not, hey, Papa, not touch myself. Hey, Papa, he's... You cannot do that, bro. Papa, please. You cannot do that. Brian, you fucking do that, bro. Can you remember? Legally, you cannot do that, bro. Hey, Papa, you can't fucking do that, bro. Legally. Please. Legally, you cannot do that, bro. I'm sorry. Please, not do that, bro. Okay, sorry. You legally cannot do that. Are you sure? Are you legally cannot do that? You know that, sir? Okay, sir. You got him? That's wrong, bro. I'm with that. Y'all legally can't do that. I'm with that. I got stay down.
What's going on? What's up with you? Watch out, man. What y'all on with me? I don't know what they on with me, bro. I got cameras. I got cameras, y'all tweaking. I got cameras.
In Los Angeles, Donahue can be spotted running at a U.S. citizen and shoving him to the ground, as well as detaining someone at a raid on a car wash.
Agent Donahue is the embodiment of the problem this commission seeks to solve, and he is not alone. We found several other agents who repeatedly used excessive force and violated other rights during Operation Midway Blitz. When you fail to hold individuals accountable for their actions, those actions continue and they become emboldened in our streets and against our people. The same is true of our institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Salcedo, and thank you to Ms. Martinez and Mr. Parente for their time and for that testimony. Very compelling. The commission will now take a very brief 10-minute intermission. Okay, we'll start to take our seats, please. The commission is asking the council to please reconvene.
I'll get them.
We'd like to get started, please. Mr. Arce, Mr. Salcedo, Mr. Bassett, we'd like to get started. Mr. Bassett, Mr. Arce, Mr. Salcedo, we'd like to get started. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, Judge.
The commission will come back to session. Okay, welcome back. Let's now resume today's hearing. To discuss the Trump administration's pattern of lies during and after Operation Midway Blitz, I will now turn things over to Commission Counsel Ahmed Bassett.
Thank you, Commissioner Holmes. 3 directives: militarize the streets, suppress dissent, immunize lawlessness. What you saw over the last 2 days were not accidents, not the result of poor training, not a few bad apples. They were the natural consequences of these 3 directives, engineered in Washington, D.C., and imposed on one of the most defiant sanctuary cities in a state fiercely protective of its immigrant population. The 3 directives tell us what happened, but how did they get away with it? There's a word for that: lies. To militarize our streets, they had to invent an enemy. So they exploited our fear, framing immigrants as criminals, which is how you end up with paramilitary forces occupying residential neighborhoods. To suppress dissent, they had to criminalize witnesses. So they exploited our patriotism, framing dissent as disloyalty, which is how pastors get tear gassed, the elderly get beaten, and preschool teachers get shot. To immunize lawlessness, they had to dismantle existing guardrails. So they exploited our trust, framing accountability as an obstacle to security, which is why no federal agent has yet to be really held account for widely documented misconduct. Here's an example of how the administration tried to sell immigration enforcement using lies and propaganda. We heard from Ms. Martinez because she survived, but we have not been able to hear from Mr. Gonzalez, Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, because he died. A father driving to work after dropping his children off at school. His fatal sin being undocumented in America. For this reason, agents pulled him over in Franklin Park last September. What happened next, contrasted with what the government told you happened, is what you will see in this next short video.
incident, you see officers immediately approach and then put their hands on the vehicle. At least one of the officers reaches in through a window. That means what the officers have done is just substantially increase the risk that they face if that vehicle then flees. They've increased the risk of getting stuck in the vehicle, dragged, hit, or run over.
records in 12 counties in the Chicago area, plus all of those in Wisconsin and Indiana, found no criminal cases. We did find 4 separate traffic cases in which he pleaded guilty to 1 or more traffic violations, but those all occurred between 12 to 17 years ago.
Law enforcement officer is in serious condition.
Just a left knee injury, some lacerations to
Regardless of one's views on immigration policy, it's hard not to see that Mr. Gonzalez died not just a tragic, but an avoidable death over something the agents themselves acknowledged was nothing major. Their violence, therefore, required a story. So they falsely claimed Mr. Gonzalez tried to run the agent over. They fabricated a history of reckless driving. DHS gave no indication his killing was being formally investigated. And unlike the 7-year-old and 3-year-old that Mr. Gonzalez left behind, the administration moved on. As will become evident from this next video, in whatever incident the administration moved on to, their playbook was the same: to lie. With warning that there are graphic images on this following.
The individuals that were going after Tren de Aragua, one of the most violent gangs that the United States is plagued with right now.
The raid she's talking about in Chicago was a brilliantly executed raid against a Tren de Aragua complex filled with TDA terrorists. It was one of the most successful law enforcement operations that we've seen in this country.
Through arrest records of some of the men who were taken that night, where the government writes a narrative of, what preceded the arrest, what they wrote was nothing about there being gangs as the reason they went to this building. What they wrote was that they had intelligence that there were people unlawfully occupying apartments, that there were squatters in the building.
Homeland Security says Martinez rammed the agent's SUV, but Martinez says they rammed her. In this surveillance footage, you can see Martinez's gray Nissan Rogue. The Chevy is being driven by Border Patrol agent Charles Exum.
The agent is just following her like very, very closely. The ICE agent hits her.
Admitted he lied, she said. He admitted he lied about whether a rock hit him before he deployed tear gas in Little Village.
They exited the same way they could have the whole time. There was nobody blocking in and behind but themselves.
Did read the Department of Homeland Security report or whatever, the comment right after saying that they were attempting to make a U-turn, but that is absolutely false. The one kid who was down on the ground getting punched repeatedly. He and whoever he was with, another young man, ran up to the scene, and I think that's all they did.
Ask him if that fucking punch in his head was pretend.
That's what it is. He wasn't fighting you back.
Yeah, because you got dropped like a little girl.
Six neighborhoods, 6 official accounts, none of them true. So what were they trying to hide? To answer this, I want to bring you back to Evanston, to how one witness described the violence that engulfed her neighborhood as mayhem and chaos. There was no chain of command. Mayhem and chaos. The commission submits that this is what the propaganda was ultimately designed to conceal. Not just that there was misconduct, but that the misconduct was the policy. and that the resulting violence was not a failure of execution, it was the execution. The administration made a simple calculation. Legal requirements like warrants and due process only slow down the deportation machine. So in targeted communities, the administration created conditions that made people too afraid to show up to work, too afraid to send their kids to school, too afraid to see a doctor, too afraid to report crimes. They made participation in civic life so unbearable that eventually people left. DHS's own numbers confirm it. In 2025, 1.9 million people, in DHS's words, voluntarily self-deported. But they did not volunteer. They broke. The voluntary departure rate increased 28% from the prior year. That's how you know. But here is what the propaganda could not account for, that the lies couldn't change. In every neighborhood we have named over these past 2 days, and in countless more that we did not, in the face of tear gas, beatings, arrests, surveillance, people showed up for each other, often for strangers, across lines of race, background, and birthplace, armed with nothing more than a sense of solidarity. That is the republic this administration claims to defend, and that its policies betray. A republic whose founders did not write citizens in the Fourth Amendment, they wrote people, who did not write citizens in the Due Process Clause either. They wrote persons. Our system was designed for this moment, and the question before us now is, how do we defend it? On Thursday, this commission will present its final findings and recommendations. But before we get there is one more dimension to this that we must confront. Because the same apparatus that spread fear in our communities is primed for use again when the stakes could not be higher: our elections. And our next one is in 6 months. I now turn it over to Vice Chair Patricia Brown Holmes to introduce our next and final segment.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. Over the course of the past 2 days, the Commission has spelled out the existential risk that Operation Midway Blitz and the failure to properly hold its perpetrators to account poses for our democracy. That risk is not abstract, it is immediate, and it is growing. As we approach the months ahead, the consequences of inaction become more tangible, and the stakes for our democratic institutions becomes even higher. To speak directly to the risks before us, the Commission will now hear from former Minority Leader of the Illinois House, Mr. Jim Durkin.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. It's an honor to be here today. Mr. Chairman, may I proceed with my prepared comments? Good afternoon. My name is Jim Durkin. I have dedicated a great majority of my life to public service. I am proud of that public service as a prosecutor with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, a trustee at Triton Community College, and lastly, as a member of the Illinois House of Representatives, where I served for 22 years and finished as the Illinois House Republican leader from 2013 to 2023. I can look back with pride at the work that I have done for the state of Illinois. I believe elected officials should serve with integrity, fairness, and decency. That is what drew me to the Republican Party years ago. I am also pro-law enforcement, believe in accountability, and I also believe that our criminal justice system must be guided by the truth. I commend the men and women who daily wear the badge, We lost a brave public servant this past weekend in Chicago by gunfire from a violent criminal. Our police and other first responders are incredibly important, but sadly underappreciated. But for those who abuse this great honor and privilege, I cannot say the same. Last year's Operation Midway Blitz was not the finest hour in our nation. It was the furthest thing. The ICE raids in Chicago, the suburbs, and the collar counties did not occur in a vacuum, nor for honest and honorable reasons. Let's be honest. It was about fulfilling a daily quota of arrests and apprehensions demanded by the White House. Now this White House administration is positioning itself to suppress voting in the same communities targeted by ICE this past year. President Trump told the nation that ICE agents were to remove the worst of the worst from the streets of Chicago. I am fully supportive of removing the worst of the worst street gang members and violent felons. Take these criminals off our streets. But it didn't quite go that way. In order to fulfill that White House daily quota, ICE did arrest some bad actors, but a great majority of those apprehended were not violent criminals. They were construction workers, nannies, landscapers, restaurant workers, people who work hard for their money, pay mortgages and rent, feed their families, and contribute to our community. This commission has already documented the chilling effect the raids have had on Hispanic communities. When ICE surged into Chicago last fall, school attendance dropped. Emergency service calls declined. Clinic visits fell. Foot traffic collapsed in targeted neighborhoods. Now, a representative survey of Chicago residents conducted by Professor Robert Pape, PAPE, from the University of Chicago found that 3 weeks into the operation, 54% of Chicagoans believed that deployment's purpose was for political control, not immigration enforcement. And get this, 36% of Republicans in the city agreed. These are not impressions. These unnecessary, brutal assaults were filmed and documented before our very eyes. They have measurable effects. When communities stop calling 911, stop sending children to school, stop walking freely in their neighborhoods, civic participation is compromised. That is the mechanism, and it is already in motion. This form of voter suppression isn't new in Illinois. I've been involved in politics and campaigns for decades. This trick is what has been used in Chicago for many years in elections. Place menacing people in front of precincts, cause a disturbance, scare voters away. That's a form of voter suppression, and I've seen it firsthand. Our president oversees and commands a partisan paramilitary force, ICE, that he has tested in Chicago and exported across the country. ICE and DOJ have charged many individuals throughout Chicago with various federal crimes relating to the Blitz. To date, their prosecutions have fallen flat. Most cases dismissed or not guilties, which questions why charges were lodged in the first place. Senior administration allies have explicitly called for ICE to surround polling places in November of 2026. The commission should not treat these statements as off the cuff or wild speculation. Words matter, particularly when they're coming from the White House. Consider what the administration and its allies have said. In March 2026, the president's close advisor, Steve Bannon, called for the deployment of ICE agents to airports to test run, those are his words, and really perfect ICE's involvements in the 2026 midterms. The White House press secretary refused to rule out deploying DHS agents to polling sites. Same with former Secretary Kristi Noem and the current one, Markwayne Mullin, neither of whom ruled out that possibility. Mullin even added that there wouldn't be any agents at polling locations absent a specific threat for them to be there. I would hope that the Secretary would elaborate on those comments, and that he also didn't understand the concern, since there shouldn't be illegals at the polling spot anyways. The specter of ICE and DHS agents at polling places ignores a more crucial point, one that this commission's work has emphasized. It's the mere presence of these forces that impacts participation in civic duties and life. And as Americans, regardless of your political affiliation, we should suffer no illusions of whether President Trump has the temerity to deploy this force in targeted areas in the country where midterm congressional seats are in play. January 6, 2021 will go down as one of the darkest, if not the darkest day in our nation's history. Congress was tasked by our Constitution to certify the results of the presidential election. That is part and parcel of what is called the peaceful transition of power. January 6th was anything but that. President Trump organized a so-called Save America rally near the Capitol. President Trump spoke and continued on with his rigged election blather, the big lie, despite the courts and even Trump's own Attorney General rejecting those conspiracies. At the rally, Trump said, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore." Trump's lies that day triggered an angry mob, which we witnessed as one of, as I said earlier, one of the darkest moments in our country's history. Call January 6th what you want. Many have called it an attempted coup d'etat, others have called it an assault. Either way, the rioters' goal was to cause destruction, stop former Vice President Pence from certifying the election. Thankfully, the Constitution and integrity won out that day. The Vice President should be complimented. He stood tall that day, and history will be kind to him for his act of patriotism. And also, we need to thank the Capitol Police for their integrity and grit that day. But not without harm to our nation's standing and also to our reputation. We are and we must be better than Eastern Bloc autocracies with our elections. And now President Trump is trying to throw out birthright citizenship, undoing the 14th Amendment. This challenge impacts voting rights and ballot access. It just never ends with him. The right to vote is a foundation on which every other right in this country rests. It is what makes the governed the source of the government's power. When that right is suppressed, not by law but by fear, it is just not an attack on a community. It's an attack on the legitimacy of self-governance itself. This is another way our speech and our voice can be chilled, and a further insult to those who demand fair play and decency from this administration. It is a direct threat to our democracy. This weekend, we sadly witnessed the murder of a Chicago police officer, as I said earlier, but also assassination attempt in Washington, D.C. Let's be clear. The resolution of differences by force or threat of force solves nothing. It never has, and it never will. Our elections must be fair, open, and safe. We must demand that Americans be able to show up to the polls without fearing violence, to exercise their fundamental right to vote, to support something we should all agree on, a free Democrat nation. As I stated earlier, I'm a Republican. I will always be a Republican who believes in fair play from both parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very,
I'll take
very
any
much.
questions if anybody would like to ask one.
Thank you. We
My pleasure.
appreciate
Thank you
your
very
comments
much.
on the right to vote. They're very, very valuable to our commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
To help this commission and this audience understand the legal protections that exist and those that must still be built, I'd now like to introduce Mr. Sean Morales Doyle of the Brennan Center for Justice.
Good afternoon, Chair Castillo,
Vice Chair Brown-Holmes, and all of the members of the commission. My name is Sean Morales-Doyle. I'm the director of the Voting Rights and Elections Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at the NYU School of Law. The Brennan Center is a nonpartisan law and policy institute that works to strengthen the systems of democracy and justice and ensure that they work for all Americans. On behalf of the Brennan Center, I thank you for the opportunity to testify about the threat of the deployment of federal law enforcement to polling places and the ways that Illinois can prepare and respond to that threat. But I do want to take a moment to note that while I live in and work in New York now, I am a native of Illinois. I grew up in Urbana, I went to Northwestern, and I lived and practiced law here in Chicago for many years before I moved to New York. And most of my family still lives here in Chicago. Some of them in the neighborhoods that we've been hearing about today, and watching Operation Midway Blitz play out from afar was deeply troubling to me, so I am honored to be here to help the state think about how to respond. I want to start with the bottom line. Sending ICE, CBP, or any other armed federal agents to the polls or any other place where elections are being held would be illegal under both federal and state law, including Illinois state law. It would also be illegal for any federal agent to interfere in elections or to intimidate voters, no matter whether they do so at an election site or elsewhere. But perhaps more importantly, beyond being illegal, it would be a dramatic affront to free and fair elections in our country. Of course, the Trump administration has repeatedly engaged in plainly illegal and entirely inappropriate conduct, so it is still a threat, unfortunately, that we must take seriously. Fortunately, there are a number of legal and organizing tools available to protect against this threat if we plan appropriately. But there is also more that could be done, including through the enactment of new laws here in the state of Illinois. I will not spend much of my time explaining why this threat is something on all of our minds. We've already heard from Representative Durkin and others about this. The work of this commission has done plenty to expose the administration's widespread campaign of violent activities by ICE and CBP, as we've heard today, and how they've been used to stifle or chill free speech by U.S. citizens. But I do want to take a moment to highlight a separate campaign by the administration that is relevant to this discussion. For the first time in our nation's history, the primary threats to our democracy emanate from the executive branch of the federal government. The Trump administration is engaged in a concerted campaign to undermine our elections, and a number of those tactics used in that campaign involve the abuse of law enforcement authority. The president himself has repeatedly called for the prosecution of election officials who administered the 2020 election. In February, the FBI conducted a raid in Fulton County, Georgia, seizing ballots and election records from the 2020 election pursuant to a warrant that was based in conspiracy theories. And the Department of Justice has for the last year been engaged in a widespread effort to collect personal voter information from states in order to compile a national voter file. These abuses of law enforcement to undermine our elections, when taken together with the use of ICE and CBP to spread fear in our city's streets, have understandably raised concerns that we will see ICE or CBP deployed to interfere in our elections in November. And in fact, President Trump has alluded to the idea of deploying federal agents to election locations in years past, and his former advisor and close ally, Steve Bannon, as we've just heard, has repeatedly dropped similar hints within the past year. Still, I do want to make very clear that we at the Brennan Center are not aware of any plans currently underway within the federal government to deploy armed law enforcement to the polls. Indeed, administration officials have denied the existence of any such plans. And in addition, the sheer number of individual election districts and polling places around our country mean that no matter what ICE or CBP try to do, the vast majority of voters in this country will remain unaffected. And so it is important to keep in mind that part of the point of comments like those we've heard from Steve Bannon is to sow fear. In fact, that is one of the main tactics of the administration's campaign to undermine our elections, to undermine public faith in democracy. I say that because while I will focus what I have to say today on the legal protections against interference by ICE, equally as important are the ways that our state and local governments and our communities must organize to counteract a campaign of fear, to give voters comfort and confidence casting their ballots, and to instill in the American people a sense that they will not be deterred from voting and they will not stand for federal interference in our elections. Turning now to the legal protections, I will begin with federal criminal laws. First, any deployment of troops or armed federal agents to locations where elections are being held would be flatly illegal. It's a federal crime under 18 U.S.C. Section 592 to deploy troops or armed federal agents to locations where elections are being held. The text of that criminal prohibition is not limited simply to polling places, but to, quote, any place where an election is being held. While no court has yet had occasion to interpret the breadth of that provision since it's been on the books, which is since 1865, its plain meaning should encompass election offices and ballot counting facilities. And the only exception to this prohibition is for, quote, force necessary to repel armed enemies of the United States, end quote. In other words, troops and federal agents, and really troops, are only allowed near elections in order to engage in military operations to fight back against an armed invasion of our country. There is no exception for other kinds of emergencies or for general law enforcement activities. Second, there are numerous laws prohibiting interference or intimidation by federal agents, regardless of where the behavior takes place. It is a federal crime for anyone employed by a U.S. department or agency to use their official authority for the purpose of interfering with federal elections. It is also a federal crime to intimidate a person for the purpose of interfering with their right to vote. Finally, it is a federal crime for any group to threaten or intimidate anyone in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right, or for any individual and public official to subject anyone to the deprivation of any rights protected by the Constitution, including the right to vote. Of course, I acknowledge that there is good reason to be skeptical that the Justice Department will prosecute any such offense during the current administration. Under this administration, as we've heard, the Department of Justice has abandoned norms of independence in place since the Watergate scandal, embracing instead the notion that they are the personal lawyers for the president. Thankfully, there are also a number of civil and state legal protections against federal interference that do not rely on DOJ enforcement. First of all, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 prohibits intimidating voters or intimidating those urging or aiding others to vote, and provides anyone who experiences such intimidation the ability to go to court to enforce the law themselves. This means that a voter, an election worker, a campaign worker, intimidated by ICE agents can go to court to seek an injunction against the intimidating conduct. Second, there are Illinois state laws that do not depend on DOJ enforcement. It is a crime to intimidate voters in Illinois, as it is in every other state in the country. Illinois allows civil suits to private individuals to remedy the deprivation of any right to vote under state or federal law. Now, I will acknowledge state prosecutions of federal officials doing their jobs are rare because of the supremacy clause in our Constitution, which says that federal law trumps state law. The supremacy clause provides federal actors a defense against state criminal prosecution if they are carrying out their legal duties. And there are similar limitations on civil suits against federal officials, including the doctrine of qualified immunity. But by definition, the commission of a federal crime cannot be part of a federal officer's legal duties. There would therefore be a powerful argument that given all of the federal criminal statutes I already discussed, ICE agents or CBP agents interfering in elections would be subject to prosecution for state crimes. These charges will be brought by state's attorneys here in Illinois, who are entirely independent from the Justice Department. And in instances where an ICE officer violates someone's constitutional right to vote, they can also be held liable for damages. That said, there is more that Illinois could do. Specifically, the General Assembly could pass laws that duplicate the federal prohibitions on interference by troops and federal agents in our elections, and the federal laws that prohibit the deprivation of civil rights. A federal official engaged in conduct prohibited by these state law duplicates would by definition also be acting in violation of federal law, and therefore subject to prosecution by the state. These state mirrors of federal law provide the most straightforward and invulnerable mechanism for using state law to hold federal actors accountable. And the Brennan Center has submitted to this commission a copy of our model legislation the General Assembly might use to enact these duplicate laws in Illinois. We're very happy to answer any questions about the proposal. I want to close by turning back to the importance of thinking beyond the law. Much of the campaign waged on election integrity by this administration depends on using fear to undermine public faith in our elections. In turn, the most important thing we all can do in the face of such a campaign is to double down on democracy. We must vote. We must make a plan to do so, and to do so early, whether by mail or in person. We must encourage and support our neighbors and friends to do the same, and remind them that state and local election officials are working hard to ensure that our elections remain safe and secure. We must also be prepared to participate in democracy in other ways. We must let our elected representatives know that we expect them to oppose any attempt to use the government to interfere in our elections. And if necessary, if the administration really were to attempt to cross this line, we must be prepared to engage in peaceful protest to oppose it. We have now all witnessed the power of such mobilization across the country in Chicago, in Minneapolis, and in other places. We should all view the deployment of armed federal agents to interfere with our elections as a line that cannot be crossed. If we are united in that view and prepared to stand up for our democracy, alongside state and local officials who are prepared to enforce the laws that are already on our books, we can ensure that we have trusted elections again this fall, and I'm confident that we will. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Morales-Doyle, for those very valuable comments. The evidence presented to this commission, laid out over the past 2 days, has brought a clear picture into focus. We heard different voices from different neighborhoods with different experiences, but observed an unambiguous and undeniable through line. Operation Midway Blitz was a coordinated campaign of escalation against our community. It involved lies and propaganda to both justify the operation and cover up the abuses of power. As was laid out from the very beginning, it was not accidental. It was a carefully constructed playbook. Now that the record has been set, we have a responsibility as a commission, as a country, to decide on a path forward. We can pursue justice and accountability to ensure nothing like this ever happens again, or we can turn a blind eye and put the future of our democracy at risk. I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Castillo for closing remarks.
Thank you, Vice Chair Holmes, and thank you. It's hard to believe that we're getting to the end of our last hearing. I said yesterday, this is just a tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of evidence out there. There's a lot that has been gathered by this commission that we were not able to present in this type of public forum. I want to thank all of the commission staff who has worked hard. I want to thank my fellow commissioners who answered the call that the governor made to work on seeking accountability for the people of Illinois. Most of all, I want to thank the citizens of Illinois who were out on the streets, who videotaped these agents, allowing us to present some of the videos that we did present here, who gave their accounts. For people like Ms. Martinez, who came in here and testified. This is probably the 4th time she's had to relate being shot on the streets in Chicago. And it's a very difficult thing for her to talk about, as you all saw. And yet she feels very strongly about her community and accountability. So I'd like to believe that over the course of these proceedings, we have developed as a commission a very substantial evidentiary record. In my 25 years as a federal judge, I've never seen the type of brutality shown by the agents involved in Midway Blitz. It is really unprecedented. And it's not only the brutality, but it's the manner in which they carried out the brutality. The way they laughed about it, the way they went and took pictures as if they were on some tour. It's the manner, and it shows you the hostility. Where did that hostility come from? Where did it come from? Think about that. Think about yesterday we showed you President Trump posting before this all began that Chicago was about to find out what war looked like. And think about that, less than 12 days later, Mr. Villegas Gonzalez was dead. Think about that. Think about that connection between him posting that, sending the agents in the manner in which he's sent. So this record is just grounded in testimony corroborated by multiple sources, documentary evidence, video evidence that we will have as a record, and it's gathered over 6 months. And despite limitations in access to federal materials and the lack of subpoena power, the historic levels of violence against our community, as I said yesterday, are not hard to collect because it's all over the place. It was done in an open and notorious and obvious way. And not surprisingly, federal officials have ignored our written invitation to appear and try and explain their Midway Blitz activities. We would love to have officials come in here, especially the one remaining official now that Mr. Bovino has been sent to his retirement and Kristi Noem is no longer head of Homeland Security. The one that we would love to have here is Mr. Miller, who was right next to the president, even as I'm probably speaking. But we did get to see him in a sense. He won't come here before this commission, but we saw him on that video, and we saw him talk about how federal agents had immunity. And it's no accident that from that conversation, we see the brutal conduct that we've examined in these hearings, because these are not isolated incidents. It reflects a pattern that across locations and operational contexts is consistent in structure and effect. So I'd like to think personally that this commission has shed a light on that pattern. And I'd like to think that we connected the dots. And let's just pause on that for a little bit. What are the dots here? Well, you have an administration that sets unrealistic apprehension and deportation goals. That's number one. Then they send a military group dressed the way they were to brutalize a community and sweep people up. Then they don't have adequate detention facilities for these people that they're going to take in, because the Broadview Center was only meant to hold 15 to 30 people. Then some of the people they're deporting, they're sending to strange countries, not the countries of origin, and they're publicizing all of this by using their propaganda. It's no accident that therefore you have self-deportation, people that left, or so-called, quote, voluntary deportations. That is the pattern. That is what Operation Midway Blitz was all about. It wasn't just shaped by street-level decisions, but these are directives from the very top, from the White House, that are dictating how authority was exercised. Yesterday, we saw Kristi Noem say she wanted the agents to go hard. All of these things operate together. They're not separate. They're part of a single operational framework that's applied across multiple levels. So Trump's administration sent them in to disrupt, and they predictably disrupted and eroded daily life in public space. They created fear that still exists, fear that might affect even the elections that we just heard from former Representative Durkin, who was good enough to come here across any party lines. This is no accident. Using brutal, unnecessary, and at times lethal force leads you to live under a cloud of fear. And that's how Chicago residents lived. And some still live that way, especially the children in our community, who will need substantial help to get through this after witnessing what they saw. So those who dare to protest, observe, and document were met with unjustifiable force and oversight into this conduct has been non-existent. I watched Secretary Noem testify before Congress. She was asked very pointedly, how many agents have been disciplined? And not surprisingly, she could not give one example of an agent who's been disciplined. It just hasn't happened. So instead what we have are lies. Official accounts of key events were often efforts to gaslight the public into not believing their own eyes. And let's just pause on that for a second, because for a while it did work. But as a great Republican president from this state said, Abraham Lincoln, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And that is exactly what happened, ladies and gentlemen, because when Mr. Villegas Gonzalez was killed in Franklin Park, right away the administration came out and said he was trying to run over the agents, and because people didn't look at that closely, they just let it go. It didn't get that much sunlight. And then, lo and behold, Ms. Martinez, the very next month, is shot 5 times. But right away, the administration labeled her a domestic terrorist. And because she happened to be a gun owner, she was charged in federal court and imprisoned, having survived being shot 5 times. And everybody's sort of like, well, we don't know what happened. It sounds like maybe she rammed her car into them, and it's not that bad. Yeah, but later on, as the facts come out, you saw here today, they were all lies, all of them. She did not ram their car. I've seen her testify before Congress. She was making the final payment on that car. And there's one thing that I know, having grown up on the West Side, you don't take a car that you're going to make a final payment on and ram it into anywhere, because you've been working hard for that car. And she came here and she told the truth, as she has told the truth every single time, and it's been hard for her. But the administration, they kept on lying, because they felt like, well, we got away with this in Chicago, so lo and behold, they kept lying in Minneapolis, and this time, no one believed them, because there were plenty of videos out there as to how Ms. Good and Mr. Preddy were unfortunately killed in Minneapolis. And I just want everybody in this audience to just think for a moment, how do you think Ms. Martinez felt when she saw the videos of Ms. Good being killed and Mr. Preddy being killed? Just think what that trauma was for her. That is what we're trying to avoid. That's why we need accountability. We've examined this up and down, and accountability cries out. Ms. Martinez has come here with their attorney, Mr. Parenti, and asked for accountability, and that's what we're going to ask for. So the record reflects how this was all orchestrated by a hierarchy in giving operational direction, public messaging, and enforcement priorities. Now it's really going to be up to us to go after some of these senior officials who put these field operations into place. They put them in intentionally, and we need to go after them just as intentionally. So the administration's statements of one lie after another, now that we have the benefit of hindsight and can look at that and shed light on it, we see now, for the first time, all the lies, one after another, going after the worst of the worst, lie, going and seeking people that were domestic terrorists, lie, the fact that Chicago was violent at all, as I said yesterday, armed with whistles, blowing their horns, that was the violence that these agents were confronted with? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So we saw individuals detained over and over again, including U.S. citizens, use of force with no connection to enforcement activities, deployment of chemical agents. I just want to pause on that. Deployment of chemical agents. Our very first witness at our first hearing, the world's renowned expert on chemical weapons. First of all, you should know, as was said at that first hearing, chemical weapons are banned in warfare. And these agents, you saw them throwing around tear gas as if they were water balloons at a kid's party, just throwing them around. And our good doctor who came in said that that tear gas has lasting, permanent effects. So people that were tear gas on the streets of Chicago repeatedly, as occurred after Ms. Martinez was shot in Brighton Park, they might suffer serious consequences yet, especially if they had asthma or any other kind of breathing problem. So we've seen repeated failures of accountability, serious incidents of force, deadly force, and that supports a broader conclusion. Operation Midway Blitz is not a series of enforcement actions. It's a coordinated operational approach in which policy enforcement and messaging function together in a reinforcing structure meant to intentionally inflate deportation numbers. The administration sadly created a structure that facilitated the expansion of force, the demonization of dissent, and outright destruction of any accountability guardrails. This Thursday, 2 days from now, this commission will issue its final report. We can only hope that this report is carefully studied by the public and the appropriate authorities, including the new leadership at the Department of Homeland Security, and certainly both aisles in the U.S. Congress who are currently debating the manner in which immigration enforcement should be carried out. Should we have agents wearing masks in full military gear? I don't think any law enforcement officer would ever say they need masks. In the history of Chicago, where federal agents have gone up against the most violent criminal organizations of all time, from Mr. Capone's era to the new era of street gangs and drug gangs, agents have never worn masks out of concern for personal safety. That police officer who was killed at Swedish Covenant this weekend was not wearing a mask when he was killed. Our police officers never wear a mask. What are we hiding? And instead, what are we inducing by sending agents out in masks and full military gear? Don't you think 1 and 1 equals brutality when you mask up agents? So our report is going to make very specific and detailed recommendations aimed at strengthening accountability and preventing the reoccurrence of the community devastation that has occurred in Illinois and in other communities such as Minneapolis. No single report that we can issue is going to cover every instance of harm, but in the face of falsehoods and mischaracterization by the federal government, the record establishes something very essential: a clear, corroborated, permanent record, durable account of what occurred during Operation Midway Blitz and how it was structured. This report needs to be evaluated by other states and by public officials in this state who can take appropriate action, starting with the Cook County State's Attorney, who will be referred cases for criminal prosecution, because we know, as you've seen here today, the names of these agents, such as Agent Exum and others. They will be featured in our report, which will endure forever. So we can only hope and pray that the changes we suggest are implemented so that this conduct is never, ever to occur again on American soil. Thank you for your attendance at our proceeding. We look forward to issuing that report on Thursday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Castillo, for those remarks. The commission will now begin the public comment portion of the hearing. Today, we have 2 speakers who have signed up. Each speaker is given 2 minutes, and a timer will help to stay on schedule. We ask that the comments be directed to the commission and focused on personal experiences, observations, or concerns. Respectful discourse is expected at all times. The commission exists, as we've said, to build a full and accurate public record, and written comments are also always welcome. We'll now begin public comment. Rabia, you may begin, followed by Shanta.
Hello, thank you guys so much. My name is Rabia Amin. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm an Illinois native. I was born here. I went to college in Illinois, and I went to law school in Illinois. And I am a proud daughter of Pakistani immigrants. I am here to speak about what happened to my father. On September 17th, my father, Asif Amin Chima, was driving to work when Custom Border Patrol's officers conducted an illegal traffic stop. When my father tried to exercise his right to an attorney, officers threatened to smash his window and forcibly remove him. That moment changed everything for my family. After he was taken, we were left in the dark. We often had no idea where he was. There were last-minute transfers between facilities with no notice. For days, my father went missing in federal custody, where they isolated him, put him in an undisclosed location, refused him phone calls to families and attorneys, and refused to give him life-saving medication, including diabetes, heart disease, glaucoma, thyroid, and more. Due to this, he ended up collapsing and was sent to the ER, where Custom Border Patrol refused to give the hospital my dad's full medical history and didn't allow the doctors to perform proper tests. To this day, we have no idea why my father collapsed. In less than 3 months, my father had lost over 40 pounds. This is what my father looked like before he was taken. And this is what my father looked like in less than 2 months in ICE detention. When we tried to get answers, we were met with confusion, inconsistency, and lies. Every ICE and Border Patrol officer I spoke to told me something different. There was no transparency, no accountability, and no clear system we could rely on. And then, on January 1st, without warning, he was deported. We were not given any flight information, and we were not able to properly prepare for his arrival. Our family was completely cut out of the process. And once again, ICE attempted to deport him without any of his life-saving medication. This is not just about enforcement, it's about how enforcement is carried out. What this commission has found in Operation Midway Blitz, reports of aggressive tactics, lacks of oversight, and disregard for people's rights reflect exactly what my family has experienced. My father is not just a case. He's a human being, and families like mine deserve dignity, clarity, and justice. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Shanta?
Thank you. My name is Dr. Shante Renee Robinson. I am founder and lead consultant of the Robinson Collective. I'm a proud resident of the Woodlawn community and mother of 2 children who attend CPS. Since Operation Midway Blitz began, I've been hearing from folks, my neighbors, people from all walks of life that this brand new of federal immigration enforcement is not who we are. The children being torn out of their mother's arms, that's not who we are. The helicopters invading neighborhoods in the dead of morning, not who we are. The people terrified of leaving their homes, the ones dying of heartbreak and violence, the generational trauma we have created and will not now or maybe ever acknowledge or remedy, that's not who we are. I'd like to say, as someone who taught U.S. history to high schoolers many years ago, that it may not be who we tell ourselves we are, but it is the very water we swim in. It is the bedrock of our foundation as a culture and a society. We have to stop asking, is this who we are? Because the answer is yes. A more apropos question, given that this is who we have shown ourselves to be over and over again, will be, who will we choose to be tomorrow? I call on not only this committee, but our state and local representatives to rise, stand up, and hold the perpetrators of crimes against humanity and domestic terrorism accountable. If you don't, then you are another aquifer, another rain cloud, providing more and more water to the oceans of injustice in this country. As Justice Jackson from the Nuremberg trial stated, and I quote, "The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated," end quote. So if they are mighty, let us be brave. If they are lawless, let us be brave. If they are without humanity, let us be brave. If they represent who we've always been, let us be brave and become something better. And let's start today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great way to end the day. We thank you both for your stories. This concludes our hearing for today. It concludes our hearings, and as you heard from our chair, we will be issuing our report on Thursday. We would invite you all to read the report and to let your family and friends know about the report, to visit the website and to, participate. We have to continue to participate. Thank you very, very much for your participation today. This concludes our hearing.